Hello and welcome back to JAAM and welcome to the PlayStation Plus review for September. So I'm going to be reviewing all of the PlayStation 4 games that are available on the PlayStation Plus this month. So if you guys want to check out any specific game, click on the little video and that will take you to the review for that game. I'm going to be starting with Grad, which is a 2D platform puzzler with action elements, where magnetism and other electromagnetic powers are the key to discovering the secrets kept in a long abandoned tower. I'm then going to be moving on to Drifter, which is the story of an interstellar drifter travelling the stars on a simple mission of exploration. After that, we're moving on to Super Time Force Ultra, which is an action-packed platformer with a time-travelling twist. You're in control of time itself, bending and stretching it to your advantage on the battlefield. And finally, we're going to have the game that we voted for this month, Grow Home, and that's a game where you play as Bud, which is a botanical utility droid, a robot on a mission to save his home planet by harvesting the seeds of a giant alien plant. Okay, so the first game I'm going to start off today with is Grad, and I really like this game. I felt the stars were really good. The story was there. You can't really understand the story. There's no sort of storytelling more through sort of pictures and stuff and music. There's no voice audio or anything. You have to sort of get the grasps of the story from cutscenes. There's not really cutscenes either. There's a cutscene at the beginning, and then when I was exploring, you go into like a theatre, and then it tells you a little story about obviously, which is the more of the background to everything that happens. And I find it really good. I find it really easy to play, and I quite enjoyed it actually. It very much starts off with you sort of just learning the basics, running and jumping, and then it moves you on to the more advanced stuff. You get like a glove, and then you have magnetic sort of properties based on that. Like, so if you have red and blue, so like the school magnets that you used to have at school, and opposites attract, you know, and opposites attract. And everything that's similar sort of just repels. There are a lot more little other tools, and I found it quite an interesting game to play. I really enjoyed the way that you played the game and the ideas behind it. It wasn't overly complicated, it wasn't really simple in at the same time. You were challenged, but you weren't expected to be an expert straight away, which is really good for a game that you're not really sure about. I found the boss fights really fun. They weren't overly obvious what you had to do. So you had to sort of understand what you could do in the game, and then had to try and go on from there. I found that really interesting, a way of solving the problem, because you weren't just given, oh, this is the weak spot for this monster, this boss. You had to sort of understand how the game works and what you were going to do to beat the boss. So far I've only fought 2 bosses, but like the one you can see on screen now, I had to quickly figure out that you could change the state of the boxes that are being thrown towards me in order to, you know, use them as like projectiles and missiles, and then lowering the health of the other boss. One of the things that does get me a little bit on this game is sort of it's very sort of hardcore in terms of you get sort of like one hit and then that's it. You have to go back to the beginning. You know, there's no sort of life system, no sort of like 3 hits and then you're dead. It's sort of you get hit, you're off. Which, you know, it could be kind of annoying for a new player that isn't so experienced with platformers and puzzle games and stuff. But I was alright with that. In the end, thought I found it okay to get on with. There is generally no UI on the screen. Like you've got no idea sort of where you are. There's a map that you gain access to, but you have to sort of view that as you go along, rather than being able to just say, oh look, this is where I am in terms of the whole tower. There are a few general bosses and like general monsters in the game, but most of the time there's different elements of electricity and that you have to sort of deal with, or tiny little robots that produce like a magnetic pulse, and you have to use them often to help figure out puzzles and that. I found that really interesting, rather than having sort of a main sort of, you know, you've got no real combat in the game, which I found quite refreshing actually. rather than, you know, sort of having like a sword or a gun and then being able to slice through monsters and do what you want. Actually having to sort of puzzle your way through or like work out your strategy before running into a group of sort of monsters or anything like that. So overall, I really enjoyed playing this game. The pros, this is quite easy to play. It's a lot of fun. It gets your brain thinking about how you're meant to be doing, what you're meant to be doing. I really enjoy playing this. It's the favourite game of the week, definitely by far. There are some cons to it. Obviously, the storytelling is, you know, it's sort of a bit left to your own concentration levels. If you're not really concentrating, you'll miss certain parts of the story, as per se. There are very few instructions. Sort of, you have sort of the paintings on the walls and stuff to tell you what you're sort of meant to be doing, but that is about it, really. Another one of the cons for me is the one life sort of, and then that's it. You're a goner. You're baked beans, pretty much. That's the con, really, in terms of the fact that for like people that aren't as experienced as players, like they will struggle with that as a concept. But overall, I'm probably going to give this 4 out of 5 stars, and definitely will be going back to play this game after I've finished doing all of my editing. Okay, so the second game that I'm going to review this week is Exodrifter, and well, the very first gripe I have with this game is that it doesn't fill my whole screen. Like, that was so infuriating for me. I didn't understand why they couldn't make it fill the whole screen, and well, I'm just saying, like, overall, this game I was quite disappointed with. Very, very little instruction on how to play. Very sort of, it was very confusing at parts. The story, obviously, like, it wasn't there. There was, I remember, like, very specifically, you start off and you have 4 worlds that you can go to, and like, of 3 of them you can't do anything on. Why let me go to them 3 worlds at all? And it was really frustrating in parts. I think it sort of just didn't work. I mean, you only got life if you went back to your spaceship and then saved the game. I didn't figure that out for quite a while. And it was also very frustrating that when you went to a checkpoint, you were then given the amount of lives that you had when you first got to that checkpoint. So there was a point where I was fighting a boss, and I only had 1 health when I got to him, and that's all I had for the rest of every time until I went all the way back to my spaceship, and then got my health back. And that was really annoying. So I visited 2 worlds. So I'll tell you how it went. I visited the first 2 worlds, both of which were just water, and I didn't know what I could do. It was very hard to understand what I was meant to be doing. I was sort of just pressing buttons as they were there. It wasn't particularly useful. I sort of just had to sort of guess how it would work. Really, really frustrating in that. Another thing that really annoyed me about the game was the level of difficulty of the boss fight. It was incredibly difficult for the very first boss. Like, he would be firing like multiple sets of like missiles at you, and it's definitely not a beginner's game at all. Like, you're thrown in very much at the deep end, and you have to deal with it. It was very frustrating for me. That's all I can say about the game. You weren't really given any direction. You were just sort of like plonked in this world, and not really helped at all. There were small monsters that were pretty terrifyingly. You know, it wasn't the easiest game to play. I'm honestly not sure what they were thinking when they made this game. Like, are people just going to understand everything? I was pressing buttons and things were happening and I don't even know. Like, there was no tutorial, there was nothing. There was no like parts of a tutorial. It's just really, really confusing on a whole. Like, eventually when I did get a submarine, like, it told me how to use the submarine, but that's like, yeah, that's the only instruction I got. I really, really don't rate this game. Like, I was flying around in my spaceship to the third island, the third one I tried, which was the one at the top, and I was confused as to where I was meant to be going. really. Yeah, I didn't understand. Like, was I meant to be going this way? Like, there was two ways you could go left or right, and then I went left and ended up with some water which I couldn't get in. So I was annoyed at that because I'd already been to 2 planets where there were water, and I couldn't do anything, and it wouldn't tell me how to dive, it wouldn't tell me anything. And then I went on to the next island, to the next side, and I thought, oh no, there's more water. Luckily there was more of an island, and there isn't really that much variety to the game so far. You sort of jump around and shoot the gun up and down a bit, and yeah, obviously it's pixel arted. That's apparently the style they went for, and that's like it's okay, but it's not the best in terms of how it looks either. And I really got frustrated with the game. So overall, the cons are it's incredibly difficult to play. Like, it starts off and you're just thrown in at the deep end. Like, you have no real understanding of what you're meant to be doing or how you're meant to be achieving that. There's no controls, no instructions, no real story apart from that you crash the ship and then you're looking for something. Another one of the cons I find is that it's even when you have figured out what you're doing, it's really difficult to play. Like, it's crazily difficult to play, like especially the boss fights, just insane. Can I think of any pros to this game? It didn't crash my system. Sure, that's probably about it. Like, and I don't really know. I can't really give any more cons than that, pros than that. I just can't really think of any other positive points to this game other than that it didn't actually crash my system. And that's that. No, I'm not going to say any more about that game. Overall, in terms of stars, it's getting 0. It's not getting any stars. I really didn't like this game. Like, I just can't. I don't think I can emphasize how much I didn't like this game. So, the next game is Super Time Force Ultra, and I quite like this game. There was quite a lot of different aspects to the game that really made it an enjoyable game to play. So you have 3 different types of characters. They all do different things. They'll have different skills, and that really adds a lot of variety to the game. There's also the element of the time switching, so you can stop your character and go back in time and open up a new character, and then there's sort of like a ghost version of your character still do the other character that you just were still doing the actions you were doing. So you can layer multiple levels of actions on top of each other. I mean, it can get quite confusing quite quickly that way, but there's a very comprehensive tutorial at the beginning, and I quite enjoyed that. There's a story behind it. There's quite a detailed story actually behind it as well. There's a lot of dialogue from the other characters in terms of pop-ups and telling you what you should be doing, especially during the tutorial, which is very useful, especially for new players that aren't quite, you know, if you're just starting to play games or something, you wouldn't know what to do. So you have to think of it that way a lot of the time. There were some annoyances with the game. One of them was generally that it got really complicated, and it took a lot of concentration to really follow multiple streams of yourself to know what you're meant to be doing. So to make sure you were in the right places, if you were using the shield in one place, to be behind the shield so that you were safe, and then if you're using the sniper, which enemies you should be killing, that kind of stuff. It really helped that the game sort of gave you the tutorial, but you have to really concentrate on where you're going. The combat is, you know, the text and stuff from the game is quite funny. It's quite intuitive. Like, it's very much sort of takes the mick out of the fact that they're in the future, but they've not been there yet, so they don't know where they are. It's quite fun that way. The different characters definitely is probably one of my favourite parts of the game. Each of them do have different skills, and that means you can use them in different ways. Like, so you obviously use them in different ways. You've got the shield, and the shield's really useful for if you're needing to save people, because one of the things you can do is you can go back in time. So say if you get killed, you can go back in time, deploy another person in front of them, and say use the shield to save them. And that's actually something that you're encouraged to do, because then you actually get like bonus points for that, and you get a 2 hits on your next character. It is really fun. The game looks very good. It's a very pixel arty game again. There's not lots of details, but you can very much understand what's going on. The characters look like they've had some thought put into them, all their different styles, and it definitely feels like the game has gone on for a little bit. Like they've taken a bit of time into getting the game, not just pixel art, but you know, so it all sort of makes sense. Overall, I really enjoyed the game. I might not play on it that much. Like, it probably wouldn't be a game that I'd overplay it over and over again. I might give it a few more goes and see where it goes. I might enjoy it a lot more if I do that, but I'm really not sure. Overall, I'm probably going to give it a 3 out of 5. It was generally quite good. I'm going to give you the pros and cons now for this game. So the pros are there's a lot of variety and it's a lot of fun. There's guns, there's different tactics, there's the forward and backwards in time, and that is generally quite fun to play with. That it's also quite easy on the eye. It's not something that you are, oh, what am I looking at? There's a lot of effects, lots of little bits that keep the like the depth in a pixel art game. The cons for me is also the time traveling part. It gets very complicated very quickly, especially if you're a new person. It's gonna drive you crazy. And also some of the sounds can just get a little bit frustrating, especially when you're going forwards and backwards in time. It's sort of like scrubbing on like an audio thing, and yeah, I'm not really. It sort of gets to me a bit, but other than that, really like the game. Okay, so the last game is the game that we voted for, Grow Home, and well, what can I say? I didn't vote for Grow Home on the thing. I can't remember which one I voted for, but I didn't vote for Grow Home. But it was the one that you guys chose, and I didn't like it. Honestly, I really didn't like it. I was playing it, and it felt very incomplete. I mean, at times it was very buggy. Like the characters' movements and feet were like crossing over and stuff. You know, they were sort of glitching out and doing all sorts of random stuff, and like it really took away from the aspect of the game. Other than that, like other than all the glitchiness, and I know it was very simple in design and sort of polygon sort of styles, but it was also a rather boring game. I felt the main character in particular he wasn't really relatable to, and he sort of just there were these like weird cutscenes where it sort of span out and showed you the land in front of you, but it didn't really tell you much more than that. There was a weird plant thing. It sort of told you the basics of the game, but not much more than that. The character I thought was very poorly animated as well. He just sort of wobbled around, and I didn't like that at all. It didn't really go anywhere. The general gameplay for me was quite boring. Like, I walked around and just climbed up some rocks. I mean, it's not what I was looking for in the game. I thought it was going to be more fun than that. I thought I was going to actually like have to go and collect certain things and then return them to places. But the whole idea is you sort of just climb up this giant tree and then sort of go to a plant and tell it to go to an energy thing, and that's pretty much it. It's quite boring, really. I found the overall gameplay quite clumsy as well. At certain points I was trying to get like crystals and stuff, and it just wasn't doing, like my character was just doing flips and like going crazy. He wasn't really doing what I asked him to do. Occasionally there was like these little weird teleporter things that you had to pull the levers down, and it was easier for me to headbutt the levers down rather than pull them down. I mean, that's like, really guys, that's really not intuitive. I'd randomly fall off the side of the tree as well. Like, I'd be climbing and then your hand wouldn't go to somewhere and your legs would be spazzing out all over the place. And it's just, no, it's just that they're just going crazy, and I didn't really feel the game at all. Biggest annoyance of this game was the sound. Like, it sounded like I was using a dial-up modem in my head. It really hurt. It really hurt my ears. Like, it was just, why were they deemed the sounds that needed to be made? surely we could have got some more like cool sounds, especially if it was meant to be set in the future and you're a robot. Surely dial-up internet's not the sound you're going for. I tell you something, this game for me is a big disappointment, really big disappointment, and I feel like it could have been so much better than it actually was. Okay, so the pros and cons of this game for me, definitely I'll go for the pros first. The pros were it looked alright. It looked visually okay. I know it weren't anything special. It seemed to work generally. I could see the concept and the ideas behind it, and they could have been great, but they just weren't there altogether. Like, I understand where they were going with the game, giving you the uniqueness to grow your trees up into different places, but I feel like it didn't really achieve that. The cons for me, definitely the sound. The sound is tremendously awful. It's just, ow, that's all I can say. Another one of the main cons for me is the bugginess, is the general sort of just blurriness. It doesn't seem to have, it seems like they've taken no care in making sure that their character actually works in the world, rather than its feet just going halfway through the floor or through a tree or through whatever else it feels like at that point. I mean, it really didn't seem like there was any fluidity. It felt like I should have been controlling the arms independently, but I wasn't. It really confused me in that sense. Overall, probably going to give this game 1.5 stars out of 5, because it had the makings of a good game, but it didn't achieve what I was hoping for it. It really felt like there was meant to be more, but there wasn't. And I don't know if I'd have given it some more time and got further into the game, whether I'd have found that, but at this stage it felt very boring. And to be honest, I didn't really care much for Bud. And Bud, this is what I think of your game. Right, that's all from me for this week. Next month I should be back with the games, and hopefully we have some better games than we have had this month. If you guys want to know any more about any of these, anything in future PlayStation Plus episodes, please let us know. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye. Coming round the mountain! Coming round the mountain! Coming round the mountain when she comes! She'll be riding 7 night horses when she comes!
7 night horses.
She'll be